Hey guys, what's up? We are back here with another video today, and today we are doing the Notre Dame schedule and roster breakdown. So as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like button down below. Make sure that you are subscribed to both my channel, Chicago Sports Network, and I am joined today by Stat Sheet Sports, so make sure that you are subscribed on his channel as well. So we are getting into our Notre Dame prediction today. We just finished up the Clemson one, so if you want to go watch that, you are more than welcome to. But let's get started with this. What are your first thoughts about Notre Dame? Obviously with a lot of transition, so if you want to sum it up in a quick punch here, Lincoln.
Yeah, Notre Dame, a lot of transition. Obviously Brian Kelly gone, Marcus Freeman in. They also lose Kyle Hamilton, who was just a monster at safety. They lose Kyron Williams, the running back, and they lose Jack Cohn. I don't know how big of a loss that is. You definitely lose experience as Tyler Buckner comes in. He only threw 35 passes last year, so not a whole lot of experience there, but I think he definitely has more potential than Jack Cohn does. I mean, Cohn was just concrete feet in the pocket. If once he drops back, he's not moving. Yeah. So if you can get to him, you can get him. Whereas Buckner, he can evade the pocket. And get out of there and make something happen. I think it's a solid roster overall coming in. You got receivers Braden Lindsey and Avery Davis returning. Michael Mayer, the big guy at tight end, arguably the best tight end in the country, if not the best, definitely second best behind Brock Bowers. And then you return the entire offensive line except the right tackle, and that will be filled by freshman Blake Fisher.
The only thing that I will point out about the right tackle position is Fisher did play that position. Yeah. Like, it was split between the two, so it was
he's redshirt freshman, but
yes, you kind of lost a right tackle with Josh, whatever his name is that I cannot think of, even though I'm a Notre Dame fan. I guess it's bad. But, like, you're not... Yes, he wasn't a full-time starter last year, but you basically returned your offensive line.
I think just the biggest key going into the season for Notre Dame is Tyler Buckner and how he plays. We know the defense is going to be solid. We know the offensive line is going to be good. My only thing is how we know Michael Mayer is going to be good. Is how does Tyler Buckner play and how do these receivers play? Is there going to be a downfield passing game for Notre Dame, or is it going to be a lot of short passes and runs? That'll be something to watch. And we know the running backs are going to be good with Chris Tyree and Logan Diggs. And Buckner should still be good in the run game. I'm just interested to see how he does in the pass game. Last season, going 21 of 35, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So not the best. Obviously, his line could be better, but it's not a terrible line either for a guy who was a true freshman last year.
So, basically, I'm not going to say too many of my thoughts because I'll make a record prediction later this week. But, so, Marcus Freeman, what are your initial thoughts, especially with technically, depending on what site you're looking at, the number 1 recruiting class in 2023 and the number 1 in 2024 with the additions this weekend?
I think Marcus Freeman definitely brings something to the table that Brian Kelly couldn't, and that is recruiting. Kelly never recruited. He was always a good recruiter, but he was never at the level that Marcus Freeman was.
Never elite.
Yeah, and even Notre Dame, when Brian Kelly was, Freeman was the defensive coordinator, they still weren't recruiting, at least on the offensive side of the ball, as well as they are now under Freeman. So he brings that to the table, not just being able to recruit defensively, but also get those guys on offense as well.
Like getting C.J. Carr and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That is...
I just think the biggest question for Freeman is he as good of an in-game coach as Brian Kelly is? We haven't really got to see that aspect of it yet. I mean, we saw him lose the bowl game 37-35 last year, but that's just one game, small sample size. So that's the only thing I need to see from Marcus Freeman is how good of an in-game coach he is to see. Because obviously Brian Kelly's a pretty good in-game coach.
He's a good CEO. That's what he was good at. He wasn't good at recruiting. And he was a good-ish in-game coach. He didn't make great in-game adjustments or didn't do a great job of motivating people for big games.
Yeah.
I think Marcus Freeman would do a great job at motivating people for big games, just knowing his personality and knowing the type videos that have come out of Notre Dame and stuff like that. So, To quickly go over the roster here, the defense is pretty stacked. But the offense has a lot of question marks outside of the offensive line in the tight end position. To go over the defense quickly, we'll start with that and then move to the offense. Defensive line is elite this year with Riley Mills, Jason Adamiola, Howard Cross, and Isaiah Foskey. All of those guys bring back a lot of depth and a lot of potential, especially with Foskey. Foskey could be a top 10 pick if he performs this year as well as he possibly could, because last year, let me see if I can find Foskey's line. There he is. He had 11 sacks last year, so if he could get 15 sacks, he definitely has the athletic frame. You're looking at a possible top 10 pick.
Definitely needs to get some more TFLs, though. Only had 1.5 of those. See him get the running back down in the backfield.
Correct, yes. And then I'm very excited. Riley Mills should be somebody that is a star potential. I don't think he will be super great, like a Isaiah Foskey level, but definitely contribute well. Your linebackers are returning, and J.D. Bertrand, Bo Bowers, Jack Kaiser. You have a lot of depth there. And then you also have the star kid and Jalen Sneed coming in, the former 5-star from South Carolina. That could be interesting. And then your secondary with Cam Hart, Clarence Lewis, Houston Griffith, and Brandon Joseph, the transfer from Northwestern, looks to be good and have good depth. But it is a little bit untested in the safety position with the loss of Kyle Hamilton. What do you think about this defense? Do you think that this is a top 10 unit in the country?
I think it's top 10. We'll have to wait and see if it is top 5 level, but I think it's definitely top 10. You mentioned Brandon Joseph. He's a good safety, but he's not a Kyle Hamilton. He's not a guy that's going to go from the far hash all the way to the sideline and make an interception like Kyle Hamilton did. He's good in the pass game, but he's more of a run support type safety as well. I think he brings a little bit more in run support than Kyle Hamilton did, just in the sense of bigger hitter, and he can tackle the bigger running backs easier than Hamilton did, because that was the only thing that you could say was bad about Hamilton's game, was those running backs that are over 220 pounds could break some tackles from him, run through his arm tackles occasionally. But Brandon Joseph, a little bit stronger, a little bit bigger, can tackle those guys, but definitely not as good in the pass game.
So now moving on to the offense, the key is the quarterback position, but I'll give my analysis in a second. Offensive line, really going to be elite this year and really going to be elite for years to come. It's a really young one outside of Jared Patterson at center. You have...
And Josh Lugg.
Yes, Josh Lugg. But the other thing is with Josh Lugg, I could possibly see a guy like, what's his name? Let's see here. Where is he? Rocco Spindler. Rocco Spindler could, the former 4-star guard, I could see him getting some snaps this year and maybe taking that spot, but we'll see. But it is a pretty young offensive line, especially at the tackle positions with Joe Alt and Blake Fisher, two guys that have a lot of promising start in them. Blake Fisher, who was thought to be the best one of them, and then Joe Alt just played like an All-American type player. He got freshman All-American. So he played well. Lorenzo Styles flashed a lot of potential in the bowl game and against USC. And then Chris Tyree. This is one note that I will make, is that with Chris Tyree, with him having drop foot last year, I could see him busting out big time this year, especially in the kick returning game, maybe having another kick return touchdown like he did against Wisconsin. But I think that is something that could change, because if you want to look at another drop foot experience, look at Robert Quinn for the Bears. He went from a guy that had 2.5 sacks or 3.5 in 2019 to having, or in 2020, to having 19.5 sacks the next year. Drop foot is a major issue, I found out as a Bears fan and a Notre Dame fan. It really affects your ability to rush, to have explosiveness, and that's literally what Chris Tyree is. He was the explosive guy. So when you lose that extra step, it really does hurt you. I don't think I need to say anything about Michael Mayer. If you want to pass him the ball 100 times in a game, you're not going to hear a complaint from me. And then Tyler Buckner, I don't know. He could turn into the best quarterback in the country. Not really this year, or he could be somebody that completely struggles. Like, it is such a spectrum of, he played extremely well in California in the high school system and showed passing ability and anticipation and stuff like that. But all he showed us at Notre Dame so far is his running ability mainly. He played okay in the Virginia Tech game, definitely had some struggles, didn't look at coverages properly and had a couple of picks. So you have issues there, but he didn't have an off season. He came in as a summertime guy and not an early guy. So he had a couple of months to prepare, and then he wasn't the main focus. It was between Drew Pine and Jack Combs. So maybe with an off season, I have absolutely no expectations for Tyler Buckner. I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. Anything that you want to say, Lincoln, before we head into the schedule part of this?
Let's get into the schedule.
So we are going to skip the Clemson and Ohio State games because those are, let's
do them in order.
Do it in order. At Ohio State, at the Horseshoe Week 1. Lincoln, thoughts? You can give a win or loss, but it's up to you.
That's going to be a tough one. I think this is a loss, and I think it's by 10 points or more. I just don't think Buckner is going to be able to come in and go to Ohio State and get the win with him not having any starting experience really or any much playing experience. Like I said, he's only thrown 35 passes in his career all last year. He's probably going to throw the ball close to, if not that many times, just in this game.
I don't know if they would throw the ball 35 times. Not with Logan Diggs, Chris Tyree, and
I think they will with Ohio State's defense being good, and I think they're going to get down. They may have to start throwing the ball to come back. I mean, he's going to throw it at least probably 20 to 25 times.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. How good is Ohio State's defense? It wasn't good last year.
I expect Ohio State's defense to be better this year, and even if the defense is not much better, the offense is still just super explosive. C.J. Stroud isn't going to struggle early on this year like he did last year. He's experienced, and I think he's probably the Heisman frontrunner if I had to pick somebody. Maybe Bryce Young. I just don't know if he would go back-to-back.
True.
But yeah, C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith, and Jigba are going to be very tough to cover. And with no Kyle Hamilton, I think it's going to be really tough to cover because not only was Hamilton just as fast, he was just as tall as Njigba.
He was a lot taller than Njigba.
Njigba's like 6'3", 6'4". Hamilton was 6'5".
I thought he was 5'11" or something.
I thought he was tall. I think Olave was 5'11". I may be wrong.
Look, we're gonna look at this because
let me look this up.
I got it. I'll just look at Phil Steele here. And Njigba is only 6 foot. Kyle Hamilton's 6'5".
Okay, I thought Njigba maybe it was.
And 6 foot's probably pushing it if it's Ohio State.
I thought there was one that was 6'3" for him last year. It wasn't Olave. Was that Wilson? That was Garrett Wilson.
That's
Wilson,
right. Yeah.
Garrett
Wilson was the tall possession receiver.
Either way, Njigba is still going to be tough to cover. Honestly, him being 6 foot probably makes him even tougher to cover just because he's smaller. He's going to be. I don't think Brandon Joseph is going to be able to cover him, and I think Cam Hart and Clarence Lewis are going to have a hard time on him.
It's going to be a tough matchup, and you're definitely going to have to scheme for it because he is an elite wide receiver, like maybe a number 1 overall wide receiver.
And we really saw that in the Utah game when they would triple team and he would still come down with the catch.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to be a difficult assignment. The only way I see Notre Dame winning this game is if Notre Dame is able to play possession ball the entire time and just keep the ball and run out the clock and just slow down the game with Buckner. And because Ohio State's defense, I know Lincoln thinks it's going to be much improved, but they haven't proven anything to me. If they are weak and Notre Dame's able to chew some clock here, then I think it could be competitive. And then maybe Notre Dame gets a game-winning field goal or something like that. I don't think Notre Dame wins the game. It's going to be an extremely tough one to win with Marcus Freeman it's basically his first game as head coach. I guess you could count the Fiesta Bowl, but it wasn't his coaching staff, it wasn't really his players and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Moving on to Marshall. Any qualms here about a Notre Dame victory?
I think Notre Dame's going to win this one easily. I don't think there will be any problem with that. I think Marshall is going to not stand a chance in this one.
Okay, agree.
I don't think they'll be able to stop the run game.
California, any notes? Because
Not really.
They're not
kind of the same story. Not going to be able to stop the run game. Not going to be able to move the ball on the Notre Dame defense. So,
At North Carolina, this should be an interesting matchup.
It is.
It is a matchup that Notre Dame has beaten North Carolina at, and it hasn't come down to the last play, but it's definitely been one where I've had a sweat for a couple of quarters about, like, are we sure about this game? Are we sure we're going to win it? It wasn't a guaranteed victory, but it definitely wasn't one that was down to the wire.
This is a game I could see Notre Dame losing, but with it being week 4 of the season, I just don't see North Carolina being ready. They have a new quarterback in Drake May. Now, if Buckner comes out and he struggles, plays like DJ did last year for Clemson, then I could see North Carolina winning this game if Drake May is playing good. But I think Notre Dame is going to win the game.
I think Notre Dame's defense is much better than UNC's, and Notre Dame's offense and offensive line and Michael Mayer. The support foundation system is good enough that it should be better than North Carolina. So.
Yeah.
Then you have a bye week, and then you play one of the more interesting games of your schedule, an underratedly tough matchup against BYU. BYU is going to be a tough one. It's in Las Vegas, so I expect it to be about a 50-50 crowd since Notre Dame travels well. Maybe BYU will have a couple extra fans there since it is a little bit closer, but again, Notre Dame travels very well, or maybe really doesn't. There's a lot of fans that live all over the country that don't live near South Bend, so... what do you think about this BYU game?
I think this is another game that I could see Notre Dame losing. I think it's a trap game, but I think they'll come out on top. I just think they have too much for BYU.
Yeah, BYU definitely does have a good roster, but it will be interesting to see what happens. But BYU also has a tough schedule with Baylor, Oregon, and Notre Dame, and Arkansas. And Liberty. Ooh, that is a tough schedule.
BYU does have a good quarterback, though, Jaron Hall, who is proven. So I think coming into the season, BYU definitely has the more proven quarterback. Mm-hmm. But I think Buckner will be good enough. And I think, like you said, just the people around him, I think, will be good enough to
get... And Notre Dame does come off a bye.
Yeah, and they come off the bye week there. So, yeah, I think it'll be good enough. They'll be good enough to get the win there.
Moving on to Stanford. I am so excited about this game. It's a game that I get to go to. It's my first game at Notre Dame Stadium, so I'm extremely excited about that. Lincoln, any thoughts other than David Shaw will probably be fired at the end of the season?
He'll probably be fired, and I don't see Notre Dame having any problem winning this game.
No, I don't either. UNLV.
Once again, I don't see any problem with them winning this game.
No, Notre Dame's not a quote-unquote non-conference games is what I call them, in that the UNLV, the California, the Marshall games are all nothing. Then you have at Syracuse.
Syracuse is going to be one of those games that I think is a tricky game, not because they're good, but because they have a couple good pieces, and next week you get Clemson. So there could be, looking ahead. I think Marcus Freeman is not going to allow that or encourage the looking ahead to Clemson. But I do think that Syracuse could pull the upset, although I don't think they will. It could be a close game, but I don't think so. Syracuse does return the entire back half of that defense. All 8 of them just lose the 3D linemen, and they return 8 on offense. Their 2 best receivers and the big guy, Sean Tucker, who ran for 1,500 yards last year and 12 touchdowns, 6 yards a carry. So I think it's a potential trap game, but I don't think so.
I don't see much issue as long as you can stop the run game. The run game's not going to be easy to stop, but other than that, it's not going to be a difficult matchup there. And Notre Dame has not had struggles against Syracuse whatsoever.
Yeah.
They've beaten the living tars out of them. Even when Syracuse was good, they beat them 36-3. So, Clemson. let's make this quick because we will discuss this later a lot more in depth, and we'll probably have a live stream of that game because me and him are going to be talking about that a lot.
Whether we can get in person or if we have to do it virtually live stream, we will have a live stream together and be on there for sure. But Clemson, I'm excited for this game. I think this is going to be a tough game either way. I think it's going to be a closer one either way. I could see either team pull away towards the end of the game. Like, let's say Clemson's winning by 3, Notre Dame goes for it on 4th down because they have to from their own territory. Then Clemson gets a touchdown after that. Then I could see it being a 10-point game like that. But I think this game is going to go down to the wire. I think it'll be a lot like it was in 2020, not like it was in the ACC championship of that year. I think Clemson's going to win this game. Their defense is better. And I have more confidence in Clemson's offense, particularly the receivers, than I do in Notre Dame. And I think DJ or Klubnik is going to be better than Buckner.
Well, I will say this. I think I don't have any trust in DJ whatsoever. I think that Buckner is an unknown, but I think DJ is a worse in the sense that he looked bad last year.
Yeah.
Maybe he could improve, but Buckner didn't show me anything bad last year. It's just he didn't show me anything last year.
I think DJ's in a little better of a spot when it comes to what they've proved because DJ has at least shown us the potential that he has back in 2020 during the 2 games, whereas Buckner, we really don't know what he could be at all.
Yeah, and again, this game will completely change. Notre Dame may be beating Ohio State and undefeated and just rolling through teams, and Tyler Buckner is fantastic. Or vice versa. DJ turns into the quarterback he thought was going to be, and they're rolling through their schedule, and Notre Dame's struggling and something like that. And it could turn into a blowout, but either way.
Or you could see something where Notre Dame loses to Ohio State, kind of like Clemson did with Georgia last year, and just kind of get shooken up and just off for the rest of the season. If Buckner gets injured in that game, like DJ did last year with the knee injury in the Georgia game, you could see something like that where it affects his whole season. So this game being later in the year, there's a lot that could happen before we get there.
Very much so. Navy.
And I don't think we need to really say anything.
It is so annoying that we play Navy every year, and it is so annoying that it comes after a game like Clemson. If Clemson is the team that is undefeated and it is a top matchup, then coming after the Navy game, that could be a trap game in the sense that I don't think they lose, but I think it is 4 quarters of me sweating it out and being super annoyed and just being very on edge about that game.
I think it could be a lot like the North Carolina game from last year for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of close. It's close enough to where you're worried where Navy feels like they're just one play away from coming back in it, but at the same time, there's no real threat.
It's a 10-point game at all times, but it's also like Navy's pushing. Navy's pushing. Boston College. Phil Jacovic's homecoming game?
This could be a trap game I could see with Jacovic coming back. Zay Flowers, the outstanding receiver for Boston College. But I just don't think so. Boston College lost basically their entire offensive line last year. This is not a good offensive line against Notre Dame's solid defensive line. So I don't think Boston College is going to fare well in this one. I think it could be a game for 2.5 quarters. But I think Notre Dame's going to pull away.
So now for the fun birthing rivalry of Notre Dame versus USC, Marcus Freeman versus Lincoln Riley. Notre Dame USC is over 100 years old in that rivalry, but this new rivalry between 2 first-year head coaches at their universities. Lincoln Riley has obviously been a head coach at Oklahoma, but this is going to be an interesting rivalry. I think Notre Dame probably is able to win this game because I don't think Lincoln Riley is able to make the changes in 1 year, but it's definitely going to be a struggle in the next couple of years. USC is going to be much better now.
If I pick, I think I would pick USC to win. I just think Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison and all those other guys are just going to be hard. I don't think their defense is going to be very good, but I think their offense is just going to be too much for Notre Dame to keep up with.
I don't think that is Well, here's the thing. USC has never had a problem with getting quarterbacks and getting wide receivers. Do you want? If I need to name them off, I will. Sam Darnold and stuff like that on the quarterback end, and then a lot of wide receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster, and I can't even go through them all. But basically, that's never been their issue. Their problem is in the trenches where they still have issues.
Yeah.
And Lincoln Riley has never been a very good coach in the trenches. So I don't see why this rivalry would really change any. Maybe Caleb Williams is a little bit better than previous quarterbacks. Maybe. Sam Darnold was a number 3 overall pick. So, and maybe Jordan Addison is a little bit better. But you had multiple first-round picks under Clay Helton at wide receiver. So
I think the main thing is Lincoln Riley is a better offensive coach than Clay Helton.
Oh, he definitely is.
That's why I think it's different this time around.
I don't see USC changing it. Maybe by the end of the season, USC is a good team.
That's why, it's because it's the last game of the season. If this game was earlier in the season, if this game was where Clemson was, I would think long and hard about that one. And any time before that, I would say Notre Dame, most likely.
Here's the thing. USC's got to prove something to me before I pick them to win anything. Like, if Lincoln Riley had a season and won 10 games and now they're playing, then yeah, maybe I'd pick USC. But they at least have to prove something before I pick them in that. So that will wrap it up for today. Any closing thoughts, Lincoln?
Nope. I think overall Notre Dame's going to have a solid season, anywhere from 9-3 to 11-1. I think their record will end up. That's what I would predict. Now, obviously, Buckner could be terrible, and they could go 6-6, 7-5, something like that. Just be terrible, or maybe they could work some magic and go 12-0. I don't know, but I think it'll be a solid first season for Marcus Freeman. I think these guys will get more experience, and I think they'll be a good team.
So, as always, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like button down below at both channels, Chicago Sports Network and Stat Sheet Sports. That's all for today, and we will see you guys later. Bye.